Hello students, here we will discuss some important questions including diagram based and case based questions from chapter number 14, respiration in plants. Question number 1, a process is occurring throughout the day in X organism. Cells are participating in this process. During this process, ATP, carbon dioxide and water are evolved. It is not a light dependent process. Now answer part A of the question. Name the process. It is a cellular respiration which takes place in the cell throughout the day, and ATP, carbon dioxide and water are evolved, but no light is required. It is not a light dependent reaction. Now part B of the question, is it a catabolic or anabolic process? It is an amphibolic pathway which involves both catabolic as well as anabolic processes, that is in breakdown and synthesis of fatty acids as well as in breakdown and synthesis of proteins. The respiratory pathway comes into the picture and hence it is called as amphibolic pathway. Part C. What could be the raw material of this process? Glucose is the most favored substrate and then other carbohydrates जो पहले convert हो जाते हैं to glucose before entering to respiratory pathway. Along with this, fats, organic acids and proteins are also used as substrates under certain conditions in this process. Question number 2. Pyruvic acid is the end product of glycolysis. What are the three types of metabolic fates of pyruvic acid under aerobic and anaerobic conditions? Write in the space provided in the diagram. Glycolysis में ग्लूकोज pyruvic acid में कन्वर्ट होता है and after this इसका फेट डिपेंड करता है aerobic and anaerobic conditions पर. First fill space A in the diagram. अगर एयर प्रेजेंट है मीन्स अंडर एरोबिक कंडीशंस pyruvic acid enters Krebs cycle. In space B, when conditions are anaerobic, जैसा कि yeast के केस में होता है, this pyruvic acid will undergo alcoholic fermentation. Next, space C, when conditions are anaerobic, as in case of muscles, pyruvic acid will enter lactic acid fermentation. So, A is Krebs cycle, B is alcoholic fermentation and C is lactic acid fermentation. These are the three fates of pyruvic acid under aerobic and anaerobic conditions. Question 3. यहाँ एक फ्लो चार्ट में anaerobic respiration के मेजर पाथवे शो किए गए हैं. Now answer the following questions. Part A. Identify A, B, C and D. डायग्राम में ग्लूकोज से स्टार्ट कीजिए. आफ्टर सीक्वेंस ऑफ स्टेप्स ग्लूकोज चेंज होगा इनटू ए एंड ए इज ग्लिसरल्डिहाइड 3-phosphate which will convert to 3-phosphoglyceric acid. Further, it will change to B, which is phosphoenol pyruvic acid, and it is followed by the formation of pyruvic acid. Next, see the fate of pyruvic acid C and D. C is ethyl alcohol as in case of yeast and D is lactic acid as in case of muscles. Now B part of the question. Name two enzymes involved in the conversion of pyruvic acid to C, that is ethanol. Two enzymes used in this step are number 1 pyruvic acid decarboxylase and number 2 alcohol dehydrogenase. Question 4. Study the equation given below and answer the following questions. Part A. Name the type of reaction pyruvic acid undergoes. Pyruvic acid glycolysis का end product है जो साइटोप्लाज्म में बनता है. Then it enters to mitochondrial matrix. जो reaction दिया गया है, it is taking place in mitochondrial matrix and is called as oxidative decarboxylation. Part B. Where does this reaction takes place? It is taking place in mitochondrial matrix. Part C. Name the enzyme A involved in this reaction? The enzyme A involved in the reaction is pyruvate dehydrogenase. Part D. What is the fate of acetyl coenzyme A formed? Acetyl coenzyme A citric acid cycle में enter कर जाता है, which is also called as Krebs cycle, and it combines with oxaloacetic acid or OAA and form citrate or citric acid. See the reaction written here. OAA is combining with acetyl coenzyme A in the presence of enzyme citrate synthase and formed citrate, and also coenzyme A is released during the reaction. Question 5. The summary equation for a particular phase of respiration is given below. Study the equation and answer the following questions. Part A. What does this equation represents? This summary equation represents the reaction in Krebs cycle. Part B. Where does this process takes place? This process of Krebs cycle takes place in mitochondrial matrix. Part C. How many ATPs can be formed from 4 NADH and 1 FADH2 shown in the equation? NADH and FADH2 enter करते हैं electron transport system में, and 3 ATPs are formed from 1 NADH and 2 ATPs are formed from 1 FADH2. So, from 4 NADH we will get 12 ATP molecules, and from 1 FADH2 we will get 2 ATP molecules. Question 6, Part A. What does this diagram represent? This diagram is representing the formation of ATP by phosphorylation of ADP. ADP is adenosine diphosphate. ADP phosphate से combine करता है और ATP बनाता है. Or you can also write, it is the diagrammatic representation of ATP synthesis in mitochondria. Now part B. What do the letters A, B, C, D represent? In the diagram, A is representing ATP formed. B is F1 particle of ATP synthase. It is the headpiece of ATP synthase जो ATP बनाने में help करता है. Now C is the phosphate group which combines with ADP, and D are 2 hydrogen ions. Note कीजिए 1 ATP molecule के formation के लिए 2 hydrogen ions और 2 protons का movement होता है. Diagram में एक point E भी show किया गया है. It is representing inner mitochondrial membrane. Now part C of the question. Which among them undergoes conformational changes? Among these, F1 particle undergoes conformational changes. Question 7. यहाँ फ्लो चार्ट में डिफरेंट मेटाबॉलिक पाथवेज में इंटररिलेशनशिप शो किया गया है. स्टडी द फ्लो चार्ट एंड आंसर द फॉलोइंग क्वेश्चंस. पार्ट ए. आइडेंटिफाई द रेस्पेक्टिव केमिकल कंपाउंड्स दैट लेटर्स A, B, C, D and E represent. A is glucose 6 phosphate, B is fructose 1,6 biphosphate, C is glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, which changes to D, which is pyruvic acid. This pyruvic acid will convert to E, and this E is acetyl coenzyme A, which further enters to Krebs cycle. Part B. Why is the respiratory pathway appropriately designated as amphibolic pathway? Respiratory pathway is called amphibolic pathway because it involves both anabolic as well as catabolic processes. Question 8. Different substrates get oxidized during respiration. How does respiratory quotient RQ indicate which type of substrate, that is carbohydrate, fats or proteins is getting oxidized? पहले इसका आंसर चेक कीजिए. When carbohydrates are oxidized, then the value of RQ is equal to 1. When fats are oxidized, then the value of RQ is about 0.7, and when proteins are oxidized, then the value of RQ is about 0.9. Now, second part of the question देखिए, RQ is equal to A upon B. What do A and B stand for? RQ is equal to A upon B. Here A represents volume of carbon dioxide evolved and B represents the volume of oxygen consumed. Now the next part of the question, what type of substrates have RQ of 1, less than 1 or more than 1? RQ is 1 for carbohydrates, it is less than 1 for fats, and it is more than 1 for organic acids. Question 9. Given below is an electron transport system. Name 1 to 5 complexes involved in it. Diagram में देखिए, complex 1, it is NADH dehydrogenase. Complex 2 is FADH2 dehydrogenase or succinate dehydrogenase. Complex 3 is cytochrome BC1 and complex 4 is cytochrome C oxidase, which includes cytochrome A, cytochrome A3 and 2 copper centers. Now next is complex 5, which is ATP synthase, which has 2 components FO and F1. Question number 10, part A. Even though glycolysis yields 8 ATP molecules, only 2 ATP molecules are the net result in the fermentation. Give reason. Diagram में नोट कीजिए both alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation और देखिए जो glycolysis के दौरान 2 NADH molecules बन रहे हैं, they are used in the reduction of pyruvic acid और ये NADH इलेक्ट्रॉन ट्रांसपोर्ट सिस्टम में अब एंटर नहीं कर सकते. इनसे मिलने वाले 6 molecules of ATP कम हो जाते हैं. As a result, there is a net gain of only 2 molecules of ATP takes place during the fermentation process. Question 10, part B. How many ATP molecules are produced from number 1, 1 molecule of pyruvic acid on its complete aerobic respiration? When 1 molecule of pyruvic acid undergoes complete aerobic respiration, then 15 molecules of ATP are formed. Part 2. How many ATP molecules are produced on complete oxidation of 1 molecule of acetyl coenzyme A? Pyruvate acetyl coenzyme A में convert होता है, which enters in the Krebs cycle, and on its complete oxidation 12 molecules of ATP are formed. You can check the summary of ATP formed during complete aerobic respiration of 1 molecule of glucose, which is given in the table. Net 36 ATP molecules are formed on complete aerobic respiration of 1 molecule of glucose. Now, part C of the question number 10. How many protons pass through complex 5 for the synthesis of 2 molecules of ATP? Second diagram में check कीजिए. 1 ATP molecule के formation के लिए 2 protons का movement होता है through complex 5, that is ATP synthase. So, for formation of 2 molecules of ATP, 4 protons pass through complex 5. Question 11, part A. Write the step of glycolysis where NADH plus hydrogen ions are formed. Diagram में note कीजिए जहाँ A लिखा गया है. This step is conversion of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate into 1,3-biphosphoglycerate, during which NADH and hydrogen ions are formed. Part B of the question. Mention 2 steps of glycolysis where ATP is consumed. Note कीजिए step 1 and step 3 जहाँ B लिखा गया है, जहाँ ATP का यूज हो रहा है. नंबर 1 देखिए. When there is a conversion of glucose to glucose 6-phosphate, 1 ATP molecule is used. Second, when fructose 6-phosphate is converted to fructose 1,6-biphosphate, here in this reaction, second ATP molecule is utilized during the process of glycolysis. Question 12, Part A. Indicate the step in the citric acid cycle where FAD is reduced to FADH2. See the citric acid cycle and note step A. During conversion of succinate to fumarate, FAD is reduced to FADH2. Part B of the question. Indicate 2 decarboxylation step in Krebs cycle. 2 decarboxylation step नोट कीजिए डायग्राम में B1 and B2. B1 देखिए, it is the conversion of citrate to alpha ketoglutarate where decarboxylation takes place and one molecule of carbon dioxide is formed. B2 देखिए, it is the conversion of alpha ketoglutarate to succinate where second decarboxylation takes place during the Krebs cycle. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for staying with me. Subscribe the channel to get the information about my new video. Thank you so much.